The latest from 7 News with Angela Cox.
Good evening and welcome. Breaking tonight, an update just in on the Queen's health. We're live to Balmoral. Wayne Kerry's defence. Our reporter's there as the AFL legend talks publicly about his white powder scandal for the first time. Developing now, 2 hurt, a woman arrested over inner city stabbings, and major COVID-19 rule changes are about to take effect. Those details for you. We begin, though, by going straight to the Queen's residence at Balmoral Castle. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfield is live there for us. Hugh, what's Buckingham Palace had to say in the past few minutes?
And the important thing to remember here is that it's very rare for us to get any update at all on the Queen's health. So the fact that we have this statement that's just come through is significant. I'll read it for you. It says, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Unfortunately, that's probably the grimmest update on the Queen's health that we've ever received during her 70-year reign. We were told about 16 hours ago that the Queen had been advised to rest by her doctors after a busy day. They described it as a full day on Tuesday, where both Liz Truss and Boris Johnson both came here to Balmoral as part of that transfer of power. We saw the Queen then standing up, using a walking stick, certainly dressed for the Scottish summer, which can be pretty chilly at the best of times, and she appeared to be quite happy. But something has clearly changed in the last 24 to 36 hours, which has prompted her doctors to be concerned for her health and the recommendation that she remain under medical supervision. Now, in the last half an hour or so, there's been a statement from Liz Truss about a completely separate issue, the new Prime Minister in the House of Commons, and there appeared to be some murmuring and movements going on between frontbenchers who were being passed notes. Sir Keir Starmer, the opposition leader, was also being told some significant news. That's when we received this statement, and then we heard from the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle.
When I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment, I'm going to take no more. If there is anything else, we will update the House accordingly.
Hugh, what is the rest of the royal family's movements right now?
We're being told by Clarence House that the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, Charles and Camilla, are already here at Balmoral, and that the Duke of Cambridge, Prince William, is on his way after no doubt taking his 3 children to their first day of school in Windsor in the last couple of hours. He is on his way here to Scotland. So that will only serve to heighten the concern that there is for Her Majesty's health. As I say, she was told to rest by her doctors in the 24 hours after seeing Boris Johnson and Liz Truss here yesterday. She was due to take part in a virtual meeting of the Privy Council that would have involved swearing in new members of Liz Truss's cabinet. So unfortunately, if the Queen is unable to take part in a virtual call, as we know that she was able to do when she had COVID at the start of the year, and during other periods where she may have been advised to rest, the fact that she's been unable to take in that is probably not a good sign. We do know that the Queen did go to hospital towards the end of last year. The palace essentially did try to keep that secret and were only really pushed into telling the public when a newspaper said they were going to publish it. And the Queen's health really started to go downhill around September, October last year when she returned from her summer holidays here in Balmoral. She carried out a flurry of engagements in the run-up to the COP26 summit in Glasgow, but eventually had to pull out of that summit, instead sending a recorded message. So with the Queen's health the way it is right now, I think there will be concern, but also some relatively practical issues that the royal family will need to face. We know that Prince Charles has had to take on a lot more duties in the last year in particular, including attending the state opening of Parliament alongside Prince William a couple of months ago, there's no way that in the Queen's current condition that she would be able to do something like that. So if her condition continues the way it is right now, I'd have to think that you would expect to see Prince Charles taking on even more of a workload, and that may include swearing in those cabinet ministers at some stage in the next couple of days. So just repeating the update from Buckingham Palace that we received just a couple of minutes ago, it is that the doctors who care for Her Majesty are concerned for her health and have recommended that she remain under medical supervision, the Queen remaining comfortable and here at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, Ange.
OK, and of course we'll come back to you through the show if there are any further developments. Thanks so much, Hugh. Wayne Carey has fronted the cameras in the past few hours about his white powder scandal. Tegan Dolling is in Wagga Wagga. Tegan, what's the AFL legend had to say?
So, Ange, he's come out just before he was due to speak here at the Wagga RSL. He's actually here to speak in a men's mental health forum. This was something that was booked in quite a few months ago, but obviously because of this saga at Crown in Perth, his lawyers told him now might not be a good time to go ahead with the talk. It's his hometown. He has a lot of local support here, so it's something he really wanted to continue doing. Before he went and spoke in the forum, he's come outside and addressed the media, and he was really strong about wanting there to be an investigation into Crown. He was really damning in saying that if they thought that there was an illicit substance in that packet that he had, then they should have been calling the police. Now, he is blaming Crown. We tried to also ask him quite a few other questions about what the substance was, about why he takes crushed up medication, because he's claiming it's an anti-inflammatory, but they were questions he didn't want to answer. Instead, he went straight inside. But take a listen to what some of the things he had to say.
If what was alleged that happened, then the police should have been called straight away. They then had another opportunity when I went up to my room to call the police, and they never called the police. I want to know why. They had two opportunities, 40 minutes apart. If what was alleged had occurred,
that have just joined our coverage, we are reporting on a major update on the Queen's health. Royal commentator Victoria Arbiter is live in New York for us. Vicky, what do you make of what we are learning tonight?
Well, I wish the news were better, but without wanting to cause any further alarm, I would say this is really as grave as it gets. Buckingham Palace is not in the business of providing a running commentary on the Queen's health. So the fact that a statement was issued saying that they were expressing concern was already unusual. Then came further word that that the Queen's children were joining her at her side, that Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall were going to be with her, and Prince William. We've now learned that all of the Queen's children are either at her bedside or on their way, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are on their way. So the fact that the family is all gathering around to be with her does illustrate just how serious the Queen's health is.
Vicky, what do you think would be happening inside the walls of Balmoral Castle right now? You're in a pretty unique position. You've spent time in the palace as a child. What do you think is going on?
I think there'll be definitely an air of calm. Everyone certainly will want to not raise anxiety or create any kind of sense of building alarm. They'll want to be as calm as possible for the Queen. But I think when a family gathers, the royal family is just like any other family. And when you're gathering potentially to say farewell to a much-loved member of the family, it's very somber. I think when we look back to Prince Philip's passing, obviously the family had a little bit of time to say goodbye to him. He was in hospital for a number of weeks before he passed away. Here we have the Queen just a couple of days ago having welcomed in the new Prime Minister. She looked frail, but still fairly robust. She looked well. There was good colour in her face. And so I think this has taken a very sudden and quite dramatic turn. So the fact that the family is all rushing to be with her illustrates that something quite dramatic has happened within the last 24 hours. Buckingham Palace was keen to say that the Queen did not suffer a fall, but something has happened. So I think behind the walls of Buckingham Palace, they prepared for this. Certainly up at Balmoral, plans have been in place for decades. When any member of the royal family is of a certain age, plans are put in place. So it will be calm, it will be serene, but I think the family will be gathering together to comfort each other and to really offer the Queen solace at this moment.
You mentioned Prince Philip and that he spent several weeks in hospital. Can we take any hope from the fact that she's still at Balmoral Castle and she hasn't been moved to a hospital yet?
Yes, I think we can. I am an eternal optimist. I'm a glass half full kind of person. But again, anyone who's had an elderly relative, my grandmother, I was very fortunate to have her until the age of 97, and she would take a little dip and then suddenly she would rebound and be absolutely fine again. At the same time, if this is particularly grave, the Queen would far rather meet her end. I hesitate to even say that. I don't want to be disrespectful. It's really important that we not get ahead of ourselves because she is still very much with us. So please I want to say to your viewers that I say this with respect and with caution, but she would sooner be at home and comfortable at Balmoral, which is perhaps her most favourite place in the world. She loves Sandringham, her private family estate in Norfolk, but Balmoral is where her heart is. She loves Scotland. So I think perhaps a decision also would have been made in terms of where she is personally. Where would she rather be, in hospital, or would she rather be at home? And I think, again, like many elderly people, they would rather be in a familiar space at home. The Queen is also very conscious that any time a member of the royal family goes to hospital, there is rather a hullabaloo that goes with that. There has to be security. It then becomes complicated for other family members trying to visit their family members that are in hospital. So the royals tend to be quite conscious and aware of what comes with them when they go to hospital. So I think out of sensitivity to other people that are perhaps sick and in hospital, she also will have decided to stay at home. She knows that with this kind of news, there's going to be an enormous press presence. As we know, the press is starting to gather at Balmoral, as are members of the public. So I think also there's going to be a conscious decision to try and keep all of the circus that comes with news like that at Balmoral away from a public space such as a hospital. So there's a lot of thought, care and concern that goes into this that affects the wider public as well, not just the Queen.
And talk to me about the significance of Balmoral to the family. As you said, that if the Queen isn't feeling well, she would rather be there because it's a very special place for her. How special is it for her relationship with Prince Philip and the children?
Balmoral's an incredibly special place. Princess Eugenie has said it's Granny's most favourite place in the world. And I think it's somewhere incredibly special because it's so private. It's the one place perhaps on earth that members of the royal family can gather and completely switch off. They're free to just be a family like any other family when they're there. There's absolutely delightful footage that viewers can find on YouTube of the Queen taking her grandchildren out riding when they're all very small. And I think one of the ponies steps on her feet and Princess Beatrice is trying to help Princess Beatrice up onto the horse, and they're all just going out for a ride together. And the Queen has said she's never given an interview, but she provided commentary for a documentary in 1992 in which she said it's somewhere where the family's just free. And I think that's a very interesting choice of words because, of course, they're just on show absolutely everywhere else they are in the world. And so Balmoral, Scotland, as we know, is very close to the Queen's heart. She enjoyed special, precious time there with her own parents when she was a child. Her mother was from Scotland, and I think Scotland holds a very unique place in her heart. It's somewhere where she loves to go out on hikes. She loves to have picnics. People that have gone to visit Balmoral have said that rather than just sort of sitting in a lovely country pile, you're actually expected to put your raincoat on and go for a good brisk hike through the cold, rainy countryside. The Queen loves that kind of weather. She loves the great outdoors, and there's nothing she enjoys more than getting the dogs and the horses and being outside. And I think that's why Scotland is particularly special to her, and it's somewhere that she considers home.
What do you think it says about Her Majesty's stoicism and resilience and strength and her sense of duty that clearly she's feeling very poorly? We've had this dramatic turn, but just a day ago we saw this amazing photo of her smiling, beaming, clearly unwell, frail, with a walking stick, but still doing her job to make sure that she's the one that appoints Britain's new Prime Minister after all the turmoil that came about from Boris Johnson essentially being kicked out of office. I mean, what does that say about her sense of duty and wanting to do the job that she didn't think she was born into, but kind of accidentally ended up in?
I think it really speaks to her generation. Every single word you use to describe her then is sheer perfection, in my view. She is unlike any other, and I think that's why she's so revered and so admired the world over. She's the last remaining head of state to have served in World War II in uniform. So when we think of that, the history, the wealth of things that she has seen over the course of her reign, it's unlike anything we will ever see again. 70 years on the throne is nothing to be sniffed at. She is the longest reigning monarch in British history. She's the oldest lived British monarch, and she's the oldest serving sovereign in the world. And the fact that she still is so dedicated to her job, I think, speaks to her generation, but speaks to who she is as a person as well. I can't think of anyone other than Prince Philip, perhaps, who we very sadly lost last year, who has illustrated the same sense of duty and devotion to country and to the institution of monarchy. They both set their own personal needs aside in order to serve. And they did so graciously. They did so without any expectation of reward. They didn't want medals and honours and accolades. It was never about that. It was never for the glory. It was about bettering the country and offering the country a sense of stability and continuity. And that's what she has done. Even in 2014, when Scottish nationalists looked to the referendum on independence, they vowed to keep the Queen as head of state in the event they did obtain independence. And I think that really speaks to how admired the Queen is as well. So I think this is certainly a day that we never hoped to see. There's something about the Queen. She's the longest reigning monarch, as I mentioned, but it means that most people alive today have never known any other monarch. And I think all of us were guilty to some degree. Well, we appreciate she's human. We also just expected her to go on forever. We've sort of described her in the past as the Energizer Bunny. She's just always there, and you can kind of tell the time of year based on what the Queen is doing. That's how set her routine is, that's how set her schedule is, and so we're certainly wishing her the very best at this moment and hoping that she pulls through whatever it is that's happening.
Yeah, and not only is she the only monarch that most of us have known, but she has also managed to weather incredible scandals through the family, but her popularity has always been huge. Like, no matter what the rest of the family does, everyone loves the Queen.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, isn't it? I can't think of anybody else on the planet who's been able to just weather every storm and still come out on top. I suppose the one major dip was following the death of Diana, but history has forgiven her for that. I think at the time, everyone was so overwhelmed with grief and so caught up in the loss of Diana at such a young age and in such tragic circumstances that they forgot that the Queen was human. And in that moment, I perhaps would suggest it's the only moment in her entire reign where she has put family ahead of duty. Most of the time, duty and self-sacrifice has come first. And I think people now look back and say, oh, right, I get it. The Queen was looking after her grandchildren. She had more responsibility to her grandchildren than she did to the grieving masses that were sobbing on the Mall and outside Kensington Palace. When she felt it was appropriate, she returned to London and she addressed the British public on the eve of Diana's funeral. And I think in hindsight, people have been able to go, yes, we forgive her. We were wrong to say that she should have come to London immediately because her grieving grandsons needed her most. But I would suggest that that's really the only time in her reign where there has been a significant backlash towards her, and she was quickly forgiven. The Platinum Jubilee just in June. I'm so glad that we had an opportunity as a Commonwealth of nations to come together and thank her for her service, and that she got to witness how beloved she is.
Vicky, Hugh Whitfield reported earlier that Harry and Meghan are going to be travelling to Balmoral. We know that they've been over there on a sort of pseudo-royal tour through Europe, and they were supposed to be attending a function tonight in London, but it's being reported that they are now on their way to Balmoral. That's going to be a difficult time, obviously difficult because of the nature of the fact that the Queen's obviously taken a bit of a turn, but it's going to be difficult for the family, isn't it?
Yes, I think it's going to be immensely difficult for the family. It is for want of a better word, by luck that Harry happened to be in the UK today. And I think he'll be very grateful that he is, because that would have been an incredibly long flight from California, were he having to make an emergency mad dash. There's nothing like a family crisis and the potential loss of a loved one to make everybody reset their perspective and set their own quarrels aside for the betterment of the person that is struggling. It's still going to be complicated. There's no question. Harry and William, we know, are not on speaking terms. They're both living on the Windsor estate now. Their cottages are all but 400 feet from each other, and yet we know there were no plans to see each other. Prince Charles, we understand, had invited Harry and Meghan up to Scotland during their trip to the UK. They declined his invitation, so that does speak to this ongoing frostiness within the family. The Queen, however, is a consummate diplomat, and she has expressed time and again that Harry and Meghan remain much-loved members of the family. I'm sure if it is appropriate and if the Queen is well enough, Harry will seek to have a little private time with her in order to make his peace, hear her words of wisdom. He absolutely adores the Queen. They share a very special, very unique relationship. And I think the Queen, as with anyone, would want to make sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted before the inevitable eventually happens, whether that is in the coming days or still a couple of years from now. So, yes, I think it will be difficult for the family, but I think, again, this family are used to difficult situations and they'll put their own needs aside in order to make sure that the Queen is comfortable and peaceful.
And as you say, difficult times can bring families together. Vicky Arbiter, thanks so much for your time. We'll come back to you. Europe correspondent Sarah Greenwald is in our London bureau. Let's go to Sarah now. Sarah, the BBC has pulled away from its regular programming. How much should we read into that?
Yeah, Ange, good evening. The BBC has suspended its regular programming until at least 6 p.m. this evening, when its next flagship bulletin is due to go to air. And their royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell in the past few moments has said that Britain should prepare for the worst. For about the past 2 hours or so, since whispers started to emerge that something was happening in the House of Commons. We saw Liz Truss get passed notes. Then Keir Starmer was talking about the energy crisis. He started being passed notes. It became very clear that something was happening. He left the House of Commons for a period of time before reappearing. And then, of course, we had the Speaker make a statement and that confirmation from Buckingham Palace that the Queen is under medical supervision. So since that point, across all channels here in the UK, there has been blanket coverage of this unfolding situation. Lots of experts, lots of royal commentators, all giving their opinion on what could be happening, what is likely to unfold. When you look at all of these things all together, and the fact that all of these family members are now at Balmoral, the fact that Harry and Meghan are on their way, there's been confirmation from a spokesperson for the Sussexes that they are on their way instead of going to that event in London this evening as planned. So when you look at all of those things together, it does paint an extremely serious picture. Prince William, we understand this morning, actually did drop the kids off at school as planned for the first day of their new school. Prince George, Princess Charlotte and little Prince Louis. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, does remain in Windsor at this stage, but of course the Queen's 4 children now by her bedside. We're also hearing reports that Whitehall's permanent secretaries are gathering for a meeting this afternoon. So obviously politicians gathering to see what the next steps are there. We've had tweets from Liz Truss, Keir Starmer, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and keeping in mind, as you and Victoria were just talking about as well, and Hugh before, that this is a brand new Prime Minister. She was only appointed by the Queen 48 hours ago, and now she is dealing with what is an incredibly serious situation.
Yes, and I understand that, as you were mentioning, the notes being passed around in Parliament, I understand we heard from one of the members of Parliament basically passing on their not condolences, I'm sorry, that's a wrong word, but just their concerns about the Queen's condition.
That's right, Ange. I think we actually may have that grab to play for you.
When I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen, and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment, I'm going to take no more, if there is anything else, we will update the House accordingly.
All of the messages from the Speaker there, from Liz Truss, from Keir Starmer, from various other high-profile figures here in the UK have all been along those similar lines, Ange, of wishing Her Majesty the best, of keeping her in their prayers, or sending their best wishes to the royal family as well in what would be an incredibly difficult moment. Again, just picking up on what you and Victoria were speaking about in regards to Harry and Meghan. That journey at the moment from London to Balmoral, you can only imagine what Harry in particular would be experiencing. There has obviously been this gigantic divide between him and his brother, him and his father. We were only talking a few days ago when I was up in Manchester about the fact that there are reports that all of their jibes at the royal family have taken such a toll on Her Majesty, and she is so stoic, as we know, and you'd have to imagine she would have tried to have put that aside, but that would have no doubt taken a toll. So I can only imagine what he is going through at the moment, Prince Harry, on his way to join the rest of the family in seeing Her Majesty at this time. But also the fact that we did see her just 48 hours ago, as you said, smiling, standing, albeit with a walking stick, even though she has quite clearly not been well, just speaks to how intense she has always been. The Queen has always said that she needs to be seen to be believed, and when she couldn't personally go on a royal tour or attend a walkabout or carry out a duty, she used to send Prince Philip, and then since his passing last year, she has sent one of the other senior royals. They have stood in for her, Prince Charles, Prince William, Kate, Camilla, as we've seen over the past year or so. It was about this time last year, October, when she had to cancel that trip to Northern Ireland. She then had to cancel her attendance at the COP26 summit in Glasgow, and again, the whole time the palace has been citing these mobility issues, but she has made such an effort to appear in those pivotal moments there at the Platinum Jubilee celebration. And what a moment for this country to have experienced just a few months ago in June. The atmosphere here in London during that celebration, during the palace at the party at the palace rather, all those events over that weekend was incredibly special, and it does speak to how much Her Majesty actually means to this country as well. There is unanimous respect and adoration for this woman who has reigned for so long. So she is certainly at the forefront of everyone's minds this evening, Ange.
So I think you quoted the BBC's royal reporter saying that Britons should really be bracing themselves for the worst. Is the British public ready for the Queen if the worst was to happen?
Ange, that is a really good question, and yeah, it was Nicholas Witchell, who is notoriously quite conservative. Nicholas, his reports are always very in keeping with the palace lines. He certainly doesn't stray outside that. There's no speculation as sometimes the British tabloids will do. So the fact that Nicholas Witchell has said that Britain should prepare for the worst is certainly ominous. Chris Shipp, ITV's royal editor, on the lunchtime bulletin, which went to air about 45 minutes ago here in the UK, he also said that this is an incredibly serious situation. As I say, if you take all of these things and add them up and paint this whole picture, it's not good. As for how the public is prepared, anyone you speak to, if you get into a black taxi, and so often obviously Hugh and I are reporting from Buckingham Palace and we're doing a piece to camera or a live cross to you from down there, and the taxi driver will ask, why are you going to the palace, and we'll tell him what we're reporting on, and no matter who it is, whoever is in that driver's seat, they all say how much they love the Queen. There is this unanimous respect for Her Majesty. She has been in this position for 70 years. No one has a resume like her. So I don't think the country is ready, no, but I don't think the country could ever be quite ready for when that moment comes.
I guess when we looked at the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, and it was such a delight to see the Queen up on the balcony, but I guess there were several events, key events, that we had hoped to see the Queen at, but she wasn't there. But obviously William and Catherine and other members, working members of the royal family, stepped up. So I guess Buckingham Palace, in a way, has been preparing the Commonwealth, all of us, but I guess the British public, of seeing less of the Queen. And as her condition and deteriorates as she gets older, like anyone at 96, that they had to prepare to have William and Charles, particularly Charles, step up more.
You're entirely correct, Andrew. A few years ago, even probably 12 months ago, it felt quite awkward to be talking about a potential transition, because the Queen has been in this position for so long. She has been a constant in all of our lives through decades of enormous social change. She has been this constant, permanent figure. So to talk about that transition, even though it is inevitable, given that it is a hereditary monarchy and there will be a transition eventually, it wasn't comfortable to talk about that. And the palace has slowly made that possible by, as you say, ensuring that these other senior royals stepped up, whether it's even Edward, the Queen's youngest son, Sophie. They have been performing duties and roles. The Cambridges obviously very much at the forefront there. But the Queen, as you say, she has really tried her very best to go to whatever she truly wanted to go to. We saw her at the Chelsea Flower Show in May this year. She was using that buggy, you might recall, because she obviously loved the event. It's one of her favourites and she wanted to be there. So the palace and Her Majesty, in coordination, they found a way for her to be able to attend that. She missed the state opening of Parliament, but Prince Charles read that speech on her behalf. We then saw her on the balcony twice during the Platinum Jubilee celebration. She couldn't go to the races, but then we had that lovely sermon from the Archbishop at the service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral, where he thanked Her Majesty for staying the course and made all these wonderful horse racing analogies, because of course it is one of her dear passions, and it's a passion that is so separate also from her role as monarch. It has nothing to do with her duties. It is just something that she has loved since she was a little girl, horses, so he made that reference. So the fact that she hasn't been able to go to things that we know she would have liked to as well, like the races, like the Braemar Gathering in Scotland this weekend gone, does speak to her fragility and the fact that her age and her condition has dictated the pace and the place of these events. But the fact that we saw her on her feet 48 hours ago at Balmoral, regardless of what we don't, and this is the thing also, Ange, we don't know exactly what it is that has prompted this this statement from the palace, but the fact that it does say that doctors are concerned is very significant
and very strongly worded, and unusual to come out of the palace about the Queen's health. They've always said that they were not going to give a running commentary. Sarah Greenhalgh for us in our London bureau. We will come back to you, but we are going to take a quick break. Our coverage on the Queen's health continues next. Welcome back to our special coverage on the Queen's health. This is what we know so far. Buckingham Palace has released a statement saying that the monarch's doctors are concerned for her health. They have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable at Balmoral. Her Majesty had been due to take part in a virtual meeting of the Privy Council and swear in new ministers, but she was unable to go through with that. The palace had said it wasn't going to give a running commentary on Her Majesty's health, but that position has clearly changed. Prince Charles and Camilla are at Balmoral. Princess Anne was already in Scotland attending engagements. Other members of the royal family are now travelling to Scotland. The second in line to the throne, Prince William, took his children to their new school in Windsor this morning and is now also heading for Balmoral. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, will stay with their children at Windsor. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and his wife Meghan, who happen to be in London, are also on their way. So too Prince Edward, the Earl of Sussex, and his wife. In the nation's parliament, new Prime Minister Liz Truss was taken away for a briefing on the Queen's condition. She has said the whole country is deeply concerned by the news of the decline in Her Majesty's health. The Archbishop of Canterbury has said his thoughts and the prayers of people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen. Royal commentator Rob Jobson is live near London for us. Rob, how concerned are you?
Yeah, I'm concerned. I think the fact that the doctors have used their language that they're concerned is very unusual. It would never happen. The fact that the family are all gathering around the Queen at Balmoral is a bit of a sign, I think, too. We've thought something was for some time. She obviously, Her Majesty wanted to do her duty right till up till now, when she swore in the last Prime Minister, Liz Truss, but it's obviously taken its toll on her, and the doctors are keeping an eye on her. But my understanding is that we should be, well, all I can say is let's hope for the best, pray for the best, but be prepared for the worst.
So what are you hearing from palace insiders?
And my understanding is, before all these announcements were made, I'd heard that things were moving she'd taken a turn for the worse, and was being cared for by her doctors. It's difficult to go any further than that, really, Ange, without it being saying things you don't really want to say. The fact is, she's not very well. The doctors are concerned for her. Her family is surrounding her. She's 96. I think that probably says it all.
Yeah, I understand, Rob. We do have to be very careful and respectful at this time. Can we talk about your knowledge of her health to date? Over the past 12 months, we've been told she's been suffering from mobility issues. Obviously, emotionally, it's been a difficult 12 months for her, given that she lost Prince Philip. Other than that, has she been in good, strong physical health over the years, or has she had niggling issues that we know about?
Well, up until the pandemic, I would say that was absolutely the case. She's very robust. She went riding most days, liked to walk out long walks, and yes, was off very much in robust health. She had a couple of issues that she had to deal with, but they were minor operations. Yeah, I think the pandemic and then the death of the Duke certainly took it out of her, as it took a lot of people being cooped up like that. But she came out of that, actually, even after the death of the Duke, quite, in a way, with almost like a new lease of life. She'd been released outside again from the pandemic lockdown. And we should never forget the sort of continuity she gave during the lockdown, both in the UK and around the Commonwealth. I think when she spoke for all of us to say we'll all meet again. I think that things have got worse since the death of the Duke of Edinburgh. She's also lost a few friends that are of her generation. And she's 96, and things start, as Prince Philip used to say, things start to drop off when you're getting older, as he used to say in his not tactful way.
Yeah, she is remarkable. We do have to keep reminding ourselves she is 96. She's seen a lot. From your observations of her, you see her closer and more than we do. Do you think she's become particularly more fragile and frail through the year? Because the photo we just saw that was released, she was beaming, that beautiful smile of hers. Like, obviously she did look a little smaller and she was using a walking stick, but she looked well and good spirited.
Well, she had the glint in her eye that she's always got. She had that smile that was pretty infectious, but I thought she looked particularly frail. The newspapers noted that as well when they were talking about the photographs with her and Liz Truss. My feeling is that she has lost some weight. She certainly didn't look as, she's not certainly as agile as she was anyway, and she has struggled to walk. Yeah.
What will it be like inside Balmoral Castle with the family there? Obviously, there has been a lot of well-documented family tensions, Prince Andrew, Harry, Meghan, William. But what will it be like there? Because obviously, despite their differences, they all adore the Queen.
Well, if there's anybody who's going to bring a difference to the front door, I think they should stand at the front door and stay there. The fact is they're there to show their love and support to somebody that's been on the throne for 70 years, who's given her life to service, and I think that they should show respect, and I'm sure that's exactly what will happen. We know that the Prince of Wales was already in Scotland doing engagements and went to be by her side straight away. The rest of the royal family are joining them. The Harry and Meghan roadshow is going to rattle in too, probably, hopefully not with the Netflix crew in tow. But the fact is, it's not going to be easy because there have been some real fallouts, but I'm sure that will have to be put behind all of them as they go and see how the Queen is.
Obviously, the Queen lent on her sister very heavily before her death, and of course Prince Philip. Then she lost him. In terms of the family members that are left, who does she lean most heavily on now as support and strength?
I think each of her children has different roles to play, but clearly Princess Anne has been somebody that she's extremely close to, so Prince Andrew too. But, at this time, I think that the most important thing that she will be focused on is ensuring that she's spending as much time with the Prince of Wales as the direct heir and Prince William as possible, because when he arrives, I'm sure that will be an important meeting between the two of them. She's all about duty and putting the people first, and I'm sure that's exactly what she'll be thinking even at this moment. And it's good too that she's surrounded by her family, and she's in her own bed, and she's in a place that she's loved being, Balmoral, where all those years ago Prince Philip proposed to her.
We know that Prince Philip spent a number of weeks in hospital before he passed. Would the Queen be resisting going to hospital? A lot of people, when they get to a certain age, they just want to be surrounded by family and friends, regardless of what that means. She'd obviously be getting very good care where she is. Do you think she'd be resisting leaving Balmoral?
Yes, I don't think she'll be going to hospital. No. I think that Prince Philip didn't really made it clear that he wanted to come back to Windsor for the final moments, and I think that she's surrounded by doctors, and I don't see her going to hospital unless it's for a procedure of some sort, but I don't think that's what we're dealing with.
Rob Jobson, thank you for your insights tonight, as always. Now, this is a live shot of Balmoral Castle, where the Queen is right now under medical supervision. Her doctors there are saying they're concerned for her health. All the royals are either already at the castle or on their way as we go to air. I want to go back to Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Wilkfeld, who is at Balmoral, has been for hours there. Hugh, what movement are you seeing?
Well, we understand, Ange, that a helicopter has landed here at Balmoral, probably carrying members of the royal family. As we know, Edward and Sophie are on their way up here if they're not here already, as is Prince Andrew. Princess Anne was already in Scotland, so relatively easy for her to make her way to Balmoral. And also Prince Charles and Camilla, who've been in residence over at Birkhall, which is their Scottish residence, or their Scottish Highlands residence. Anyway, they have two homes here in Scotland. Charles, as Rob said, had been carrying out engagements here in Scotland, including in New Lanark down near Glasgow. Yesterday, he looked quite chipper. He was dressed in a kilt, visiting a local industrial facility. So things have changed overnight for Prince Charles and Camilla, prompting them to come here to Balmoral. Harry and Meghan, as we've been talking about, on their way up to Balmoral. There's a number of private planes, at least one that's landed at Aberdeen Airport in the last hour or so as well. It's about an hour and 10 minutes from Aberdeen Airport here to Balmoral. Lots of talk over the last couple of months, obviously, about Harry's security arrangements. I'm not sure whether the royals will be laying out some protection for him as he tries to get here to Balmoral to see his grandmother. This is all, what we're talking about here, Ange, is all really transpired only in the last 2 hours or so. We got that statement this morning, about 2 hours ago, that signalled that there had been a deterioration in the Queen's health. There is concern from doctors. Her condition is being monitored. And then in the House of Commons, the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, was giving a statement, an update on her plans for energy bills. It's a massive issue in this country, and probably the biggest one facing Liz Truss. She's only 2 days into this job. And there was some movement on the front benches when Nadhim Zahawi, who is the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, now that is a cabinet role here in Britain that is largely responsible for intergovernmental relations and dealing with protocol and the royal family and constitutional affairs. He came into the House of Commons. He handed the new Prime Minister a note, and you could tell on the Prime Minister's face that the news was not good. It seemed to ripple across the front bench. Then there was a note handed to the opposition leader, Sir Keir Starmer. His face appeared quite glum, and then Nadhim Zahawi left the chamber with a Labor frontbencher. Now, I would suggest that Nadhim Zahawi has been fully briefed on the situation by the palace. The monarch's health is of extreme constitutional importance in this country as it is in Australia, and for that reason as well, a member of the opposition would have been brought out of the chamber in the middle of a very important statement politically for the Prime Minister in order for that news to be shared. And obviously since then, it's only about 10 minutes after that occurred that we had the formal statement to the rest of the world about the Queen's condition. So as Sarah alluded to a short time ago, those meetings occurring in Whitehall, that is where the government offices are in Britain. When there's a reference to Whitehall, that is bureaucrats and civil servants who have been preparing for the Queen's health to change or for other circumstances to occur, because the constitutional impacts of what's going on here are fairly significant for Britain in particular. Behind the walls here at Balmoral Castle, there is an extreme family moment, or moments for the family taking place, with the Queen's 4 children either here or on their way here to Balmoral. And within government and within the halls of Westminster, Whitehall and right across London, there will be questions being had and discussions being taken about the Queen's condition, what it means constitutionally, what it means for Prince Charles, what sort of duties he needs to take on if the Queen's condition stays like this, deteriorates further. Charles, as we know, has been taking on a huge range of constitutional roles and duties on behalf of his mother, as have other members of the royal family. Prince William, you'd have to say, has absolutely stepped up. He is on his way, if he's not here already, to Balmoral. Kate, his wife, the Duchess of Cambridge, has chosen to stay in Windsor at the couple's new home. As we've been talking about the 3 Cambridge children, George, Charlotte and Louis, starting their first day today at their new school nearby to Windsor Castle, and she will want to be at home for when those 3 children finish their classes today, because as anyone knows, when these sort of things happen, kids want their family, that want their parents, at least their mum, to be around. So when they get home from school, I think Kate will be no doubt filling them in on what's been going on here.
Yeah, so a deeply personal thing for that family, but as you say, pressing constitutional issues, and this all playing out on the sort of turmoil and chaos that's been happening in government there, where Brits all of a sudden have a new Prime Minister, and the one constant that they had through generations of Prime Minister is now deeply ill, it would seem.
Yeah, Liz Truss is the Queen's 15th Prime Minister during her reign. The Queen has seen 16 Australian Prime Ministers. Anthony Albanese is her 16th. Now, she hasn't met Anthony Albanese as Prime Minister just yet, but Scott Morrison, when he was over here, I think it was when he came over for the G7 summit in Cornwall last year, he stopped by Windsor Castle to see Her Majesty, as is the prerogative of any Australian Prime Minister to call on Australia's head of state when they visit here to the UK. Constitutionally, I mean, the Queen has carried out her duties without fault over the course of her reign. It's only in the last 12 months or so that her health has dictated that Prince Charles take on some of those duties. And the monarchy and the system, the firm, is set up for circumstances like this. You know, I've been asking people for years here about, you know, would the Queen abdicate? Well, the constant that I've heard back from people who know more than me is that that would never happen, because the Queen is so committed to the duty that she signed up for as a young princess. That was thrust upon her. She didn't sign up for it. It was thrust upon her as a young princess in her mid-20s. She was born a princess not thinking that she would ever be Queen, because her uncle was on the throne, and then, of course, he abdicated. But it's that constitutional role that she plays here as head of state. And Prince Charles and Prince William play a role too, because at the moment there are 4 councillors of state. Now, that's an ancient role, which means that other people can step in for the Queen. The 4 councillors of state officially at the moment are Charles, William, Andrew and Harry, as 4 senior men in the royal family. Andrew is out of the picture. He doesn't carry out royal duties anymore for obvious reasons. Harry, also out of the picture. He doesn't even live here. He lives in California. So much of that responsibility has fallen to Charles and William in the last 12 months in particular. They are the ones who've been carrying out investitures, making people knights and dames and awarding MBEs and the like. They've been doing that for the last couple of years in particular. The Queen has essentially been allowed to step back from much of her public role, but we've been told in the last couple of months that she's been still looking at state papers every day. That red box still arrived. If we are to believe what we were told at the start of the year when the Queen had COVID that killed more than 100,000 people here in the UK. The Queen was still carrying out virtual engagements and still reading those state papers from the red box that arrived every day from the government in Westminster. So incredibly stoic. I think that is the word that not just described Prince Philip during his professional life, but also for the Queen. She has stuck with this role for 70 years. A lot of people don't even have most people's lives don't even last 70 years. So the fact that the Queen has stuck with it, has refused to give up, essentially, and continued in a job into her 96th, 97th year, it is pretty remarkable.
It's very remarkable, and to think that she was just, appointing the latest Prime Minister 2 days ago when clearly not feeling well. Just incredible. Thank you, Hugh. We'll come back to you, but I want to go to Europe correspondent Sarah Greenhalgh in our London bureau. Sarah, you covered Prince Philip's hospital stay before he passed. How is this different?
And this is incredibly different, I think, first and foremost, because of the pace of how quickly this has unfolded. It has only been not even 3 hours and things have developed rapidly. We've got the whole family essentially now at Balmoral to see Her Majesty, whereas in the case of Prince Philip, it was a very drawn-out process, and the language that the palace used initially to describe what was unfolding was very different as well. The initial reports back in February last year was that Prince Philip had walked in unaided to King Edward VII's Hospital in central London, that he was undergoing some tests, being monitored then, we were told, for an infection. Then he was transferred to St Bartholomew's Hospital, where there was a special cardiovascular section because he had a heart condition. And then, of course, he went home, the Duke of Edinburgh, and eventually passed away at Windsor Castle peacefully with Her Majesty, we imagine, by his side. So it was a very, very different process. I guess the only real similarity that I can draw is that we saw Prince Charles go to King Edward VII's Hospital to visit his father. But then, as I say, there were several weeks before the eventual passing of Prince Philip. But the Queen, I think one of the most poignant images of the Queen, at least in recent times, was at her late husband's funeral at St George's Chapel last year. I don't think anyone will ever forget that image of the Queen sitting by herself because, of course, COVID restrictions were in place here at the time. I can't even begin to count or imagine how many photos of the Queen exist, but there it is, those images there that are on the screen now. So poignant, so memorable. But this is incredibly different to what happened in the case of Prince Philip. Again, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but in terms of the palace speaking about his health, they were using language like he's in good spirits and that he is comfortable. And today in this statement from Buckingham Palace, we have had the words that doctors are concerned. So it is very different language that the palace is using. We've heard time and time again that they don't give running commentary. So it is very different.
Okay, Sarah, we're going to come back to you, but we're going to take a very short break from our special coverage on the Queen's health. It will continue next. Welcome back to our special coverage on the Queen's health. This is what we know so far. Buckingham Palace has released a statement saying the monarch's doctors are concerned for her health. They have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Her Majesty had been due to take part in a virtual meeting of the Privy Council and swear in new ministers, but she was unable to attend. The palace had said it wasn't going to give a running commentary on Her Majesty's health, but that position has clearly changed. Prince Charles and Camilla are at Balmoral. Princess Anne was already in Scotland attending engagements. Other members of the royal family are now travelling to Scotland. The second in line to the throne, Prince William, took his children to their new school in Windsor this morning and is now heading for Balmoral. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, will stay with their children at Windsor. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and his wife Meghan are also on their way. So too Prince Edward and his wife. In the nation's parliament, new Prime Minister Liz Truss was taken away for a briefing on the Queen's condition. She has said the whole country is deeply concerned by the news of the decline in Her Majesty's health. The Archbishop of Canterbury has said his thoughts and prayers, and the prayers of people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen. Europe correspondent Sarah Greenhalgh is in our London bureau. Sarah, how is this being covered locally by the British media?
And blanket coverage is, I guess, the best way to describe it. Ever since that chaos, as you might term it, happened in the House of Commons, where there was the whispering in Liz Truss's ear, the comings and the goings, the notes being passed by ministers to the Speaker, there has been blanket coverage across all of the channels here in the UK, so the BBC, ITV, and also internationally, CNN has been rolling on this as well, as we have here as well. The Queen is obviously the Queen of Britain, of Australia, head of the Commonwealth, but she is also so important to people around the world, not least because of her longevity, the fact that she has been such a constant for 70 years. David Cameron has just added to the chorus of people wishing Her Majesty the best. He has just tweeted, the former British Prime Minister, saying he is deeply concerned by the news this afternoon from Buckingham Palace. I send my heartfelt thoughts and prayers to Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family at this worrying time. And that is the similar sentiment being expressed by the current Prime Minister Liz Truss, the opposition leader Keir Starmer, and many of her new cabinet ministers as well, Liz Truss, because of course this government only came to be less than 48 hours ago. Liz Truss was appointed on Tuesday, then her new cabinet was announced Tuesday evening. They had their first cabinet meeting yesterday, her first PMQs, Prime Minister's Questions, in the House of Commons yesterday, where the energy crisis was the main topic, as it was again today. Liz Truss had just announced this sweeping package of measures, including a freeze on energy prices to try and help British households deal with energy bills over the coming winter. When this news obviously started to emerge, politicians were briefed in the House of Commons, and then that statement from the Palace. It has been a very difficult time in this country, as it has, I guess, everywhere in the world over the past few years with COVID. The Queen, again, such a constant during that period. I don't think I will ever forget watching her Christmas message in 2020 and again last year in 2021, when she was rallying the nation. She was acknowledging the fact that people felt alone. And Christmases here for so long, families' Christmases have been planned around the Queen's 3 p.m. broadcast on Christmas Day. They wait and sit there to eat lunch to see what she has to say. So during COVID over the past few years, she has been that figure again, and it is a tough time. So maybe, perhaps in part, that is why she was so determined, so insistent to carry out that constitutional duty on Tuesday, because the Palace, Her Majesty personally, and Downing Street all are aware that this is a very difficult time for Brits. I just wanted to share, Ange, as well, another tweet that I just saw before in the ad break. Again, there's been so many images of the Queen over the years with crowns and tiaras, and this person has tweeted about the photos of the Queen that we saw the other day on Tuesday, of her dressed there in her cardigan, her skirt, with a fire in the background at Balmoral Castle. So this woman has said, I think this photo captures the public's perception of the Queen far better than any of those official portraits. She looks and feels like the country's grandmother, and God knows she reminds me of mine. And I think that's also what a lot of people will be thinking at this time, is that image. You know, she does look like a grandmother, and not many of us are lucky to have a grandmother who is still so sharp at 96. And I think that's another thing that we should point out, is that anyone who has had any contact with Her Majesty over the past few months, over the past few weeks even, while she has been at Balmoral on her summer break, they've all repeated that she is sharp as a tack, that she is completely switched on. There was nothing at all wrong with her in terms of her ability to entertain people, her curiosity. We know she has been always such a curious figure. People have commented in the past how she's always been so incredibly briefed as well. If a Prime Minister or a Minister went in to talk about something, she knew that topic. And according to reports, she has been like that in recent times.
And I hear a wonderful sense of humour where she'll tell a hilarious joke and everyone stands around straight-faced thinking, is she joking or serious? And then she starts cackling. So she's still got that quick wit. I want to ask you, though, we're obviously being very careful in our coverage, because at this stage all we know is that doctors are deeply concerned. Obviously, it's alarming that all of her immediate family are rushing to be by her bedside right now. But you spoke to us earlier about some reports from the royal correspondents in London who have been covering this round for years, if not decades. They know how to read the language of Buckingham Palace. They have obviously royal insiders inside the palace. So put in perspective their comments and what they're saying the British public and I guess the Commonwealth should be preparing themselves for.
And I'm just, apologies for looking down, I'm just checking my phone just to make sure that there's no further updates. The sentiment from all of the correspondents that Hugh and I deal with on a regular basis, so Rhiannon from Sky News, Rob Jobson, of course, our own royal editor who's on Sunrise most mornings, Chris Shipp from ITV, who we see daily here in the newsroom, and Nicholas Witchell from the BBC. The sentiment is the same, is that they know the language the palace uses, they deal with the palace on a daily basis, and the fact that they have said that doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health, that speaks volumes. The fact that they haven't added any language like she's in good spirits, which they did to pad out those statements about Prince Philip, they haven't put that in there because I think they also know that people can read between the lines. So when you have doctors who are concerned and a monarch who is under medical supervision at 96 years of age, after those photos of her looking quite frail on Tuesday, I don't think there was any beating around the bush, so to speak. I think the palace knows this time that they needed to be quite frank with the British public. Also, the Balmoral Castle is very private, where Hugh is there. That's been commented on in the media coverage. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, it's a bit more difficult to see comings and goings. Family members can arrive in private. That is part of the reason that the Queen and her family have loved going there over the years, is that it does offer them some privacy, a bit of a sanctuary there in the Highlands with nature, a place that they can retreat to. So the palace didn't have to do that, but again, also, I think interesting to point out, yesterday or in the evening when we got that statement to say that she wasn't attending the virtual meeting with the Privy Council, that was because the public would have found out it wasn't just a private meeting between the Queen and one other person. This was a constitutional follow-up duty, a Privy Council meeting with the Prime Minister and with her new senior ministers. So the palace wanted to get on the front foot, so to speak, to avoid any speculation. Having said that, of course, there is always inevitably speculation around the Queen's health. So there were some royal commentators earlier talking about the possibility of a fall, but that has certainly been ruled out as a reason for this current concern. But the sentiment all very much the same, that this is a serious moment. This is a time for the nation to pray, as many of the politicians have mentioned in their tweets. And a time for the royal family to be kept in people's thoughts.
I guess also, Sarah, the Buckingham Palace has to walk a fine line. As you say, the British public look to the Queen as though she's their grandmother or great-grandmother. And just as if we were about to lose our own family member, we appreciate the time to sort of get a bit of mourning and collect our thoughts and send our love and spend time with them. I guess it's important for Buckingham Palace to really be, like you say, frank and prepare the British public that if things aren't going to end the way people are hoping, that they're somewhat prepared.
Definitely. And like I've said, it doesn't matter who you are in this country, what your background is, where you've come from, how much your paycheck is. There is this unanimous respect for the Queen, even if you're not a royalist, even if you tend to think that the monarchy maybe shouldn't be there. They still respect her personally for being in the same job for so long, for never revealing her own private thoughts and emotions on various topics. She can't be political, and for someone to be in such a high-profile position, to be the most famous woman in the world for all these decades, and not to reveal your own personal thoughts on something, or your thoughts on relationships, for example, which I guess is where a lot of the ill feeling towards what Harry and Meghan have been doing has been coming from the British public, because the Queen for so long has not spoken about that. You know, it's that keep calm and carry on motto that we know so well that she has done for 70 years. The Platinum Jubilee celebrations, I think that was so indicative as well, that I mentioned it briefly before, but that evening on the Saturday at the party at the Palace, we were on the Mall, cameraman Jimmy and I, and we were walking around. And the atmosphere there was nothing quite like I've experienced before. It was a genuine party. People who perhaps hadn't been looking forward to the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in the lead up, suddenly that got thrown out the window. They went down to the Mall to have a look. I remember interviewing 2 German women that night, and I was like, well, she's not your queen. You're not in the Commonwealth. And the woman replied, no, but she's the queen of my heart. And we had a laugh about it. But that's genuinely how people feel, even if she's not their queen. She is the queen. And you know, she's been to so many countries, even outside the Commonwealth, during her 70-year reign. She's visited countries around the world repeatedly. She's lasted longer than any other head of state. So people in this country were camped out on the street for 5 nights before she was even due to appear. So it's an interesting afternoon here, Ange. I think a lot of people will be taking time out from their work, from whatever they're doing, to be watching the coverage, to be keeping across the headlines and the updates from the palace, if we are provided with any further ones this afternoon.
Okay, thanks, Sarah Greenhalgh. I'll come back to you, but I want to go back to Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfield, who is at Balmoral. Hugh, what is the latest on the ground there? The royal family gathering there right now.
Yeah, and we haven't seen members of the royal family come through here, but there has been a helicopter that has landed here at Balmoral in the last couple of hours, no doubt ferrying members of the royal family, most of them from Windsor in the south of England, up here to Scotland. A private plane was spotted at Aberdeen Airport, which is about an hour and 10 minutes drive away. That's the main airport that members of the royal family would use. It's also the airport that Boris Johnson and Liz Truss travelled to when they came up here on Tuesday for that constitutional transfer of power that the Queen oversaw, obviously as part of her duties, the Queen appointing her 15th Prime Minister. So now we would expect that the Queen's 4 children, Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward and Princess Anne. Princess Anne was already up here in Scotland, are now with the Queen here at Balmoral Castle. Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, has made his way up from Windsor as well, after dropping his 3 children off at their new school. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, choosing to stay at Windsor, obviously, with those kids due to return home from school this afternoon. And Meghan and Harry due up here at some point, if they're not here already. They are, of course, in the UK as part of some of their engagements that they've had here this week in Manchester, Dusseldorf, and then they are due to attend a WellChild awards night in London tonight. That is one of Harry's key charities, one of the reasons they travelled back here. But Harry and Meghan here at Balmoral, no doubt, to be with the rest of the family.
And as you said, Hugh, you can't actually, from your position, see the cars driving in and out. And I guess that is one of the crucial reasons, I guess, or blessings for the Queen taking a turn up there, because it is so private. They're not in the goldfish bowl that is Buckingham Palace or even Windsor Castle.
Yeah, so these are the main gates to Balmoral. And look, we've certainly seen cars come and go, an increasing police presence as well. But there are a lot of back roads through the Scottish Highlands here as well. Burke Hall, which is where Prince Charles stays when he lives here, is about 10 minutes drive down the road on a back road.
This is my family.
But I think there'd be
them.
back paths as well between the 2 homes that he would be able to use if he wanted to. And that royal helicopter that they've got as well, that Prince William and the Cambridges often use to ferry them from Kensington Palace to an airport to go on holidays or to go on an engagement. It's how the Queen has travelled up here in the past as well. We know that she has used the chopper to go from Windsor to Buckingham Palace. That's how she travelled in during the Jubilee back in June as well. So there's lots of ways that the royals can move about the country out of prying eye without members of the public seeing them. And this is a very private moment. These are very private moments for this family. The Queen, at 96 years old, has been not just a constant presence in my life, in your life, but in the lives of everyone who is surrounding her right now, whether it's the doctors or her children and grandchildren. They have only known a world like us, with the Queen as a constant in it. And for that reason, this is a little bit different for them when you add in the family factor as well.
Yeah, and you talk about privacy. I mean, obviously we've seen a little bit of a departure from that in the past few years with Harry and Meghan's sort of tell-all interviews. But largely, the Queen is very private, isn't she? She doesn't talk about what she thinks about policy, but also anything that is going on within that family, she protects fiercely, especially what's happened with Andrew. So I guess they will be really appreciating that privacy right now.
Yeah, look, there's two examples, I think, of the way that the Queen has used language to convey her opinions, because really we don't know how she would vote if she was able to in a UK general election, or what she thinks of a Labor Prime Minister up against a Liberal Prime Minister in Australia. Back when Meghan and Harry were involved in this public to and forth between the palace and their own office over the events surrounding them leaving the royal family, there was a line that was from the palace, which was recollections may vary. And that was a good insight, I think, into the Queen's attitude towards Harry and Meghan. And then back in 2014, when the Scottish referendum occurred, the independence referendum, the Queen told a member of the public on a walkabout in Scotland that she hoped that people would think carefully about the decision that they would make. Now, that was taken to mean that the Queen wanted the Union, the United Kingdom, to stay just that, and she is, of course, Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and Scotland is a significant part of that. So little words like that, whether it's to a member of the public or in a written statement, are an insight into the way that the Queen approaches significant issues, whether they're a family issue or a major constitutional issue like the Union of the UK. So look, the Queen doesn't give much away, but when she does, it's pretty profound.
Let's do a recap of what we do know and what we don't know about her condition, because we are being very careful. We don't want to overstate the seriousness, but obviously it does seem quite dramatic, the turn that's happened today. But just talk us through once again the statement, what we do know, what we don't know for our viewers.
And so it's just gone 3 p.m. Here in the UK. The statement came out about 12:30, so lunchtime here, and it came from Buckingham Palace saying, following further evaluation this morning, the Queen's doctors are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable and at Balmoral. Now, we're reading to the language, the word concern. The words under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable. As Sarah was alluding to a short time ago, when we heard about updates from the palace about Prince Philip's health, they talk about in good spirits. We haven't heard that this time, which I would suggest is not a good sign. And the fact that doctors are concerned, well, if doctors are concerned, they know her health intimately, then perhaps we should be concerned as well. And that's why people like the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, of course, the Queen holds faith very dear to her sense of duty. She's defender of the faith. She's head of the Church of England. Justin Welby asking for prayers across the Anglican Church for the Queen at this point in her reign. And obviously words too from Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, the opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer, the former Prime Minister David Cameron, all sharing their concern. And we spoke about those moments in the House of Commons a short time ago in our coverage where there was notes handed about and glum faces. That Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, made a public statement in the House of Commons sharing the concern of MPs and also the nation about the news that we've been receiving from the Palace over the last couple of hours.
Okay, Hugh Whitfield, I know you'll stay there for us. We'll come back to you. But right now, I want to cross back to royal commentator Victoria Arbiter, who's live for us in New York. Vicky, how are you feeling about what we're hearing? We spoke a couple of hours ago, but obviously it's sounding pretty grim.
It is sounding pretty grim, Ange, and I have to say I'm personally feeling overwhelmed, immensely sad. a little shocked. It's a day that I never hoped to cover. I am one of those guilty. I'm an optimist, a glass half full kind of person, but someone who respects the Queen enormously. And I have been guilty of assuming that she will always be there. She has been such a constant presence throughout my life, partly because of my dad's position as one of her former press secretaries. Her life has served as the backdrop to my life, my entire life. He was working for the royal family from when I was very small. We lived at Kensington Palace for a time. So the royal family has sort of been an enormous presence throughout my life, but she in particular. And I know that he as well is going to be probably dealing with a number of the same emotions he experienced when Diana, Princess of Wales, passed away. There is the shock of the moment. And of course, she is still very much with us. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. But while we reflect on her life, you can't help but think of all the ways that she has made an impact, and always in a positive way. And I don't think there are many people in this world who can say that the impact that they have had has been positive on people from all walks of life, different communities, different faiths, different religions, creeds, races, professions, nationalities. She has traveled to over 116 different nations, many of those countries, Australia included. She was the first reigning British monarch to have set foot on their soil. And she has set numerous records, many of which will never be broken. And so her impact on this world is going to be felt forevermore.
As you said, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but given the circumstances and the family surrounding her at the moment, what would Charles be thinking? Obviously, he's got the personal grief of potentially saying goodbye to his mother, but also, if she does pass, that's a huge weight now passed to his shoulders.
And it's huge. I don't think we can underestimate quite how enormous this moment is for Prince Charles. Anyone who watched Prince Philip's funeral will see that he is not very good at hiding his emotions. And when he was walking in his father's funeral procession, the grief etched on his face was devastating. You'd have had to have had a heart of stone to have not felt for Prince Charles in that moment. But I've always thought it a peculiar notion that you inherit the job for which you are destined upon the death of your parent. And that is something that I don't think anyone could really reconcile, particularly those of us that sort of have nothing to liken it to. And so here we are, Prince Charles is at this dramatic juncture in his life where he's in his mid-70s. He is the longest serving heir apparent in British history. He has been preparing for this job his whole life, but it's not a job that will come easily because it comes with the grief of losing his mother. And I think that this moment in particular will be incredibly hard for Prince Charles, because while he mourns personally, he will also be needing to take the steps required of him to assume the position for which he was born. The royal family has a saying within private circles that you don't wear your private grief on a public sleeve. That's why we've seen the Queen be very stoic in the wake of her husband's passing last year. That's why she's always out with a smile on her face, looking robust, doing the job that is expected of her. And yet behind palace walls, they are human beings with very real vulnerabilities and imperfections, I suppose. And so I feel tremendously for Prince Charles at this moment.
Behind closed doors, as you say, they don't wear their grief publicly. Is there a certain member of the royal family who you think will take this the hardest?
I think all of them will feel this very hard. They all have a unique relationship with the Queen. It's interesting, the press loves to say the Queen's favourite son, the Queen's favourite grandchild. She really doesn't have a favourite, but she has a different relationship with each of them. Princess Anne has joked in the past that it speaks to the strength of their relationship, the fact that they're still talking this many years on, but that's Princess Anne's typical self-deprecating style. They are very close. Of course, she's the Queen's only daughter, but the Queen does enjoy a wonderful relationship with each member of her family. You just showed charming footage there of Prince Harry doing the mic drop skit that he did with the Queen that was sent to the Obamas to promote his Invictus Games. He's probably the only member of the family that could have got her to agree to doing that with him. The Queen is a natural performer. She's quite shy in terms of her personality. But were she not born into the royal family, she probably would have quite liked a life treading the boards. She's a very good mimic. She does accents very well. She loves musical theatre. And we've seen her putting her acting chops out there to the test, of course, with the James Bond skit. And then at the Platinum Jubilee, that charming exchange with Paddington. I didn't think she could ever top what she did with James Bond, but with Paddington, I think the entire world, our hearts collectively melted.
It was my favourite bit
she
of
has a wonderful...
My favourite bit of the
Yes,
celebrations, I mean, obviously her up on the balcony twice was amazing, but she really just has a wicked sense of humour, doesn't she?
She does, and I'm so glad you referenced that, because often the Queen is photographed looking quite po-faced, and that's by design, because she knows that whatever face she exhibits, that's going to be interpreted. And now it was bad enough when we had just regular news, but now we've got social media, we've got rolling 24-hour coverage, and so she's managed to perfect this rather neutral expression, but sometimes she can look a little glum. But in point of fact, she has a fantastic sense of humour. She loves it when things go wrong on royal engagements, because she knows when she turns up at everything, there's a fresh coat of paint, everything's been cleaned up, everything's looking pristine and perfect, when actually the joy and the memories come from when things go wrong. She's always enjoyed that, and I think it speaks to that sense of humour that she has. At Christmas, for those that celebrate Christmas, the royal family, what do you get a member of the royal family? They've got everything at their disposal, so they're quite into jokey gifts, and the Queen in particular has enjoyed some rather wonderful jokey gifts over the years, and I think that as well speaks to her humility, but also that sense of humour that you reference, and I'm glad that we've been able to enjoy that in recent years with sketches such as with Paddington.
You were saying earlier that really for most of her life she's had to choose duty ahead of family, and we saw that in her first year as Queen, where she had to make this awful constitutional decision about whether her sister can marry a divorcee or not, and she had to choose duty and her role. And then again with Princess Diana's passing, how important though, because obviously her duty and her role as Queen was important, but how important has her family been to her, and how important will it be to have them all with her now?
Family is everything to the Queen. She was very fortunate when she was born. Her father never imagined that he would assume the throne. That job was for his older brother. And so she enjoyed a very close relationship with her parents. They considered themselves we four. Elizabeth was King George VI's pride and Margaret his joy. And so she really had an idyllic childhood. And she was very keen to emulate that for her own children. Of course, her father's untimely death meant that suddenly she was thrown into a world of constitutional duty, and she wasn't able to give her children the same kind of childhood that she had. But she's done her best, and I think she has been criticised over the years. There's footage of the Queen coming back from a royal tour when Prince Charles would have been, 2, 3, 4, something like that, and the Queen Mother takes him to the station to greet the Queen, and Prince Charles looks at her as if he hardly recognises her. And that speaks to the sacrifices that she has made on behalf of her role. But she was raised to respect the institution of monarchy. She adored her father, and she saw his personal sacrifice firsthand, and so it was important to her that she make him proud. But I think in recent years we've really seen a pulling together of the family. When the Queen Mother passed away, the Queen Mother was very much of the belief that the monarch should be the single focus. The monarch was the star of the show, and so she believed that when the Queen went to an engagement, the Queen should be the one on display. But after her passing, the Queen started to take a slightly more relaxed approach to her role. Suddenly we saw her doing engagements with Camilla and Kate. That had never been done before. Suddenly Sophie was accompanying her on an engagement, and we started to see the royal family really supporting her in a way that they hadn't done before. And I think she really enjoyed that interaction, because the Queen, contrary to popular belief, she's not a dictator. There are not rules and protocols. There's not a rule book that they all follow. She likes to lead by example rather than telling people what to do. Prince William actually said that she'll never tell you what to do, but she will let you know if she's displeased. And I think royals, they all adore her so much. They want to make her proud, and they want to do well by her. So this is an incredibly close-knit family. It's just a different family because they have to make appointments to see each other simply because their schedules are so busy, which is why times at Balmoral in the summer, the time at Sandringham at Christmas, and the time at Windsor Castle around Easter is so precious.
And what an extraordinary and lucky coincidence that Prince Harry happens to be, and Meghan happen to be in the UK right now, because we were talking just before where we were talking about that skit that they did together. You can just see there's a lot of love between Harry and the Queen. They just adore each other and seem to share the same sense of humour. So after all the sort of bad blood that's happened, for him to be there right now, to be able to go up there and try to mend some bridges, I guess, if she does pass, to be able to say goodbye properly, what a gift. Huge, Ange, and I think Harry will be greatly relieved. You know, Los Angeles to London, I know it's just one flight. From Australia, you're a long way from everywhere, but it's still a very long flight, upwards of 11 hours, and that would have been a very painful flight when you're in the air and you're not sure what's happening. And with that can come a sense of guilt and anxiety and further grief and further upset for the extended family. So, yes, I hesitate to say the word luck, but it is lucky that Harry happens to be in the UK today, because there's nowhere else he would rather be on the planet than with his grandmother at a time such as this. And as we talked about a little earlier as well, Ange, moments like this can be a great leveler. They help people reset their perspective. People tend to set their personal issues and their personal quarrels aside, because the passage from life to death is a big one. And I think nothing brings a family closer together than a shared collective sense of sadness. And so I really hope everyone is able to put their personal feelings aside so that they can be there and put on a united front for the Queen. It's what she would want. And as you say, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves at this stage. There are just deep concerns and fears for her health. But thanks so much, Vicky Yarborough. We're going to take a quick break from our special coverage of the Queen's health, but we will continue shortly. Welcome back to our special coverage on the Queen's health. This is what we know so far. Buckingham Palace has released a statement saying the monarch's doctors are concerned for her health. They have recommended she remain under medical supervision. The Queen remains comfortable at Balmoral. Her Majesty had been due to take part in a virtual meeting of the Privy Council and swear in new ministers, but was unable to attend. The Palace had said it wasn't going to give a running commentary on Her Majesty's health, but that position has clearly changed. Prince Charles and Camilla are at Balmoral. Princess Anne was already in Scotland attending engagements. Other members of the royal family are now travelling to Scotland. The second in line to the throne, Prince William, took his children to their new school in Windsor this morning and is now heading for Balmoral. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, will stay with their children at Windsor. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and his wife Meghan are also on their way. So too Prince Edward and his wife. In the nation's parliament, new Prime Minister Liz Truss was taken away for a briefing on the Queen's condition. She has said the whole country is deeply concerned by the news of the decline in Her Majesty's health. The Archbishop of Canterbury has said his thoughts and the prayers of people across the Church of England and the nation are with Her Majesty the Queen. Europe correspondent Sarah Greenhalgh is in our London bureau. Sarah, we've heard from the Governor-General.
Yeah, we have, Ange. David Hurley has posted on Facebook, I believe, saying, following news from Buckingham Palace and on behalf, of all Australians, the Governor-General and Mrs Hurley's thoughts and prayers are with Her Majesty the Queen and the royal family at this time. So his words there, the Queen's representative in Australia, very much mirroring what others have said here in the UK. Even a few minutes ago, I just saw that the London Fire Brigade has tweeted that they are thinking of the Queen at this time. So the nation's thoughts, really, and prayers with Her Majesty and the royal family. We understand from reports that the royal family's website crashed when Buckingham Palace put out that statement at about 12:30 local time, so almost 3 hours ago now. Such was the rush of people going there to see if there was any other further detail or to read that statement for themselves to see what the palace was saying officially about Her Majesty's condition. And just in the past few moments, Nicholas Witchell, who I was mentioning before, the BBC's royal correspondent who has been in that role for quite some time, he has said that we are not expecting any other update from Buckingham Palace at this stage, that there is no further news or no imminent news to report at this stage. So the palace that is something that they often tell us, Ange. We've said it tonight as well, that they don't provide a running commentary. They will only release something if there is significant news to do so. But obviously everyone in this country, in the Commonwealth and right around the world hanging on to see if there is any update about Her Majesty's condition.
Have we heard anything further? Which family members have arrived in Balmoral now?
There has been varying reports, Ange, but most of them, I believe, are now there. Prince Charles arrived quite some time ago. He was already in the area, as was Princess Anne. They had engagements today. Members of the royal family have engagements most days. Yesterday we saw Prince Charles in Glasgow at a food allergy meeting with someone who had had a terrible allergic reaction to a Pret baguette here in the UK. So he was sitting in at that. So these are the sorts of things that don't always make headlines here or in Australia, but he was doing that. So we believe that they are there. Members of the family don't cancel engagements lightly. So the fact that they have done that today to be by the Queen's side, the fact that Harry and Meghan are no longer attending the Well Child Awards this evening in London, which is one of the 3 events that they purposely came to the UK and to Europe to carry out. That says something in itself, the fact that they are on their way. And royal commentators have also pointed out that Balmoral is a really lovely place for this to be happening, for the family to be gathering at a place where there are so many family moments, treasured memories, a place where they have always enjoyed going. The Queen, we know, loves her summer break there. We heard various reports over the past few weeks that she was entertaining her family, that her great-grandchildren had been to visit her, that she was going on picnics. Hugo Vickers, the royal biographer, even said a few weeks ago that she'd been out in the Range Rover on shooting expeditions, not walking around, but observing that from the car. So it is a place we know that they have always loved being. So the fact that this is where they are gathering this afternoon with Her Majesty, experience a condition that doctors describe as concerning, is in some way provide some sort of peace, or I guess provide some sort of comfort to the British public.
Yeah, I guess difficult for the British public, because typically in situations like this, if the Queen was in Buckingham Palace, you'd probably see people down there milling around, trying to offer their thoughts, maybe some flowers, just to sort of, get well, get through this, or at least support for her and the royal family. But them being sort of hidden away, I guess, may be difficult for the British public, but certainly a wonderfully private moment for a family that has had to spend their entire lives in the public eye.
You're right, Ange, and I think that's why we're seeing so many online tributes at the moment, people tweeting or posting on their social media accounts, wishing Her Majesty well and sending their best wishes also to her family, to her children, to her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. I haven't been to Buckingham Palace since this news broke a few hours ago, but I would be pretty confident that there would be people still down there. Now that tourism is happening again here in the UK after the COVID years, people are back, and every time we're down there, people ask us, they're like, is Liz here? Is the Queen here? How is Her Majesty? So I imagine there would be people down there laying flowers perhaps, or at least spending a few moments there showing that they care greatly about Her Majesty.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah Greenoch. I want to go back now to your Bureau Chief, who is at Balmoral. Hugh, what is the latest there? What movement have you been seeing?
Well, Ange, I think over the next couple of hours we can expect members of the royal family who may not be here already, probably those coming from the south of England, to arrive here. The weather's not great. The planes have been landing at Aberdeen Airport, but it's been pretty difficult over at the airport there. So, look, I think over the course of the next couple of hours we'll see some of those arrivals. Whether it's here or at another private entrance, I'm not sure. But Prince Charles and Camilla have been here for much of the day now, and Princess Anne, as we've heard, already in Scotland as well. So the Queen's 2 eldest children already here to be with her, and Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, along with Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, Prince William, Harry and Meghan, all thought to be making their way up to Scotland at the moment, and then likely arriving here in the next couple of hours. And as Sarah said, we're not expecting an update from Buckingham Palace officially. I don't think we'll get any sort of update, certainly until everyone in the family who needs to be here is here. Then if there's a change in Her Majesty's condition, then only then I think will we be told. So as we've spoken about over the course of the last couple of hours, these are intensely private moments for this family, as they were in April last year when Prince Philip passed away. This is a little bit different this time. This is the Queen at Balmoral, who is in a concerning level of health according to her doctors and is under medical supervision. The Queen has been in such good health for 70 years throughout her entire reign. And at 96 years of age, I think anyone would think that she's done very well to get to this point in the condition that she has. We saw those pictures a couple of days ago, standing up with a walking stick by the fire in the drawing room at Balmoral Castle, carrying out her constitutional duty on behalf of the nation, and now a very private family moment here at Balmoral.
Yes, and as Rob Jobson told us earlier tonight, in Balmoral Castle, the place that Prince Philip proposed to her, surrounded by her family. Thanks so much, Hugh Whitfeld. We now join our international broadcast partners for special rolling coverage on the Queen's health. We will be back with our own reporters if we have any major developments. Sunrise starts at the special time of 5 a.m. Thanks so much for your company on